Well, thanks very much. It's great to be here. This is a great crowd. I'm very pleased to get a chance to speak in front of it tonight. As was said, this is a kind of second home to me. My sister still lives out in town and country. Well, let's just say I have a Cubs doormat in my office. People often say, "Oh, you a Cubs fan?" I say, "Think about that." Let me say that the experience of the experience that I had of running for office was one of the best ones of my life. My own experience when I first told my wife, who was an attorney, that I was going to run, she said, "Well, you're not going to win, are you?" I was able to assure her that that was unlikely, but part of the reason that it was unlikely was that North Carolina is one of the most restricted ballot access states in the country. And so my story tonight will be not so much about the election, but about the experience that not just I, but we, the North Carolina delegation, the people here, did work for years and years just for a chance to get us on the ballot. We worked for years to be able to exercise our right of association. We worked for years for a chance to put our names out and allow voters a chance to choose the candidate of their choice. I find it remarkable, and I didn't really realize as a professional political scientist, that ballot access was such an issue until I had to go through it myself. So much of what I'm going to talk about today is that experience, as I said. Let me, it's a little easier to talk into that. I was in 4 televised debates, which was the first time that anyone has third-party candidates been in televised debates for the gubernatorial race in North Carolina, and that was a big advantage. We consciously set ourselves towards being able to attract that kind of free media. And it was interesting to be that close to the other candidates. Many of you know that for children, fairy tales start out with "a long time ago." But for adults, fairy tales start out with "if I'm elected." Now, I had recognized that, but at the debates, it was so clearly true that whoever told the biggest damn lies was the one who was going to get the most attention. And it was as if voters recognized that, but sometimes I found myself edging away from the other candidates because I think lightning is going to strike you. You can't possibly say that. The woman who was the Democratic candidate, Bev Perdue, had been in the state Senate for 16 years before serving as the lieutenant governor for 8 years in a Democratic regime, Democratic Party regime that has controlled the state since 1898. And she said repeatedly, "When you look at me, you see change." Now, I came to realize that what she meant was that she was going to take the taxpayers of North Carolina by the ankles and jump them up and down until their change came out and she could collect that. But the gall that it requires, that voters will often credit candidates with, that kind of lying contest, I found a bit disturbing. And often some of the lies that people tell about other candidates are the worst of all. Now, I have to admit, as a Libertarian candidate, my dream is a day when I'm a threat enough to them that they'll tell lies about me. They mostly just told lies about each other. Now, it has ever been thus, of course. You may remember in 1800, the election of 1800, there was a famous, only a few of you remember that. we didn't get ballot access. There was an editorial in the Hartford Courant about Thomas Jefferson. So let me read what they said. "Neighbors will become enemies of neighbors, brothers of brothers, fathers of their sons, and sons of their fathers. Murder, robbery, rape, adultery, and incest will be openly taught and practiced. The air will be rent with the cries of distress, the soil soaked with blood, and the nation black with crimes. Now, Jefferson won the election, and none of that stuff came true until the Clinton administration. Now, they call each other in the race that I saw pretty much everything but a ham sandwich. So the Republican and the Democrat, even in the debate that I got to participate in with the two of them, instead of answering the question, they would call each other names. And I found that quite useful, actually, because given, as I'd already established by telling my wife, I really didn't have that much of a chance to win, I had a luxury. I was able to answer the questions. And the newspapers pointed this out. Said, well, Munger actually answered the question. So I ran radio ads where I depicted the other candidates as just bickering with each other. One of them had the line where the Republican said, "Your mother is so fat that your blood type is ragu." But that's actually nicer than many of the things that my opponents said about each other. Well, much of what I can wait if y'all. Much of our experience was not so much getting the other candidates to notice, because that's very difficult for a Libertarian candidate. The people we were constantly fighting with, and y'all have this experience, was the State Board of Elections. The problem that we had was getting the State Board of Elections to deal with us on anything like a fair bid. Now, most of these are pretty nice, most of these people are pretty nice people. But their sense is that they're actually doing us a favor. So my friend Barbara Howe, who is here today, can back me up. Right before the filing deadline, we had gotten enough signatures to get more than 100,000 signatures, more than 100,000 signatures, close to 250,000 in terms of dollars that we had spent and volunteer time that we had spent in order to qualify for North Carolina's very restricted ballot access conditions. We were having trouble getting the counties to say that they had received the letter that was going to certify us as a qualifying party, which meant we could run candidates for office. So after all this, the day before the deadline for filing, we couldn't get the counties to recognize us. And so our candidates were not being allowed to pay filing fees. It was very frustrating. We scheduled a meeting with the Deputy Director of the State Board of Elections for 10 o'clock that morning. We came in, there were 6 of us, we had a lot of questions, we had files, we had backup. 10 o'clock, she doesn't show up. 10:05, 10:10, 10:15, 10:17, she walks in, stands, doesn't sit at the head of the table, stands and says, "Now you'll have to realize I have a real meeting at 10:30. That's pretty darn frustrating. It's very difficult for us to work through that. The good news is, in North Carolina at least, we Libertarians are now part of the oppressor class. We're on the other side. We are among those that don't have to deal with the State Board of Elections on those grounds anymore, because we, and I do mean we, the people that work for the campaign that my name happened to head, were able to get more than 2%. Now, let me say a little bit about ballot access. The people in this room realize it, but it helps a lot when you're trying to raise money, when you're out asking people about ballot access, to explain how this game is rigged, because they actually don't understand how difficult it is to get access. So the way I've put it is this. It's as if at the Olympics, the Democrat, Republican candidate, they get up and they have a good breakfast, because that's the most important meal of the day. They get up and they stretch and they go to the venue for the 100-yard dash and they're ready to go. And just before the 100-yard dash is to begin, the Libertarian candidate staggers up, having just run a marathon. Well, is there any surprise